walk it like I talk it, yeah, I walk it. Yeah. Flowers never grow without some water.
Welcome back to another episode of The Lion's Den. I am your host, Pastor D. And today we're going to get into this topic of the soil I'm rooted in. And in this case, the soil can represent family. It can represent relationships, whatever you want the soil to relate to for you. But it's important that we understand the good and the bad effects of soil, and some of the good effects of soil and reasonings for understanding the kind of soil you're rooted in is that good soil, it provides a host of crucial services for both people and the planet. Soil puts food on our plates. It purifies our water. It protects us against flooding and combats drought. It's also key to tackling climate change as it captures and stores vast amounts of carbon. There is no food security without healthy soil. And I love the word healthy that it uses, because you can't have a positive outcome with damaged soil. Some of the bad things about soil, it could be poor soil conditions can lead to stunted roots, brown and mushy roots. And when I hear that, I kind of think of rust in a sense, or even club root, all of which affect the overall growth of the plant. And I love that because anything trying to grow within bad soil could be affected in a negative way. The growth of it could be affected in such a negative way to where it won't come out how it was intended to. And so there's two big points that I want to talk about from this specific topic. The first one being that my roots tell my story. My roots tell my story. And the first thing about this is that we have to understand that what happened to us as a child affects who we are as an adult. And when we understand that what happens to us as a child can affect who we are as an adult, we'll understand our responses more, our reactions more, our behavior patterns more. You know, when we look at ourselves and we see how we respond and how we react to things, sometimes it's not always in a adult-like manner. Sometimes it can be labeled as childish, you know, and this comes from those childhood triggers, the trauma, the experiences, the things that we have gone through in our lives that begin to shape us as an adult. And so when we begin to go through challenges and trials and tribulations in life, we respond based off of what we know, how we grew up, what we came from, what happened to us, what affected us, be it either good or bad. And so we really have to, you know, understand this when we go back and dig into our roots and begin to understand how our roots, how they shape our story and how they help frame who we are, you know, today as men and women. And the next thing is that which you don't deal with will deal with you. And I love this so much because I grew up learning this because my mom used to always teach, you know, me and my siblings about that. And she always tell us, you know, whatever you don't deal with at some point is gonna come back and it's gonna force you to deal with it. You know, a lot of times we like to avoid things. We like to avoid situations. We like to avoid, you know, arguments. We like to avoid things that we should be facing and that we should be tackling head on, you know, but oftentimes we don't have the strength. We don't have the capacity. We don't have the knowledge. We don't have, you know, the know-how. We don't necessarily have all the tools, you know, that's possible to, you know, to handle a lot of things that we're faced with. And so we choose to just put it on the back burner. We choose to not deal with it. You know, I'll deal with that next year, next month. I'll deal with that another day, you know, and then we fail to deal with it. And so this thing constantly shows up in our life. It could be through tests. It could be through trials. It could be through people. You know, it could be through things on our job. It could be through things in our relationships. It can be whatever it is. You get what I'm saying? And until we learn how to deal with what we feel on the inside, what we're struggling with, what we're going through, until we learn how to deal with those things and to not be afraid of the challenge of dealing with them, they're going to continue to torment us. It's going to continue to be like a headache that won't go away. You get what I'm saying? And the reason why this is because, and one thing I've come to know in my life is that God, when I notice that things keep popping up and that things keep showing itself, I know that that's God challenging me to deal with it. That's him saying, stop overlooking it, stop putting it off, and stop trying to find a loop around it, and just face it, handle it, deal with it. Because if you deal with it now, it'll help you propel and progress into a better place in your life, that when God does begin to pour blessings upon our lives and we begin to get whatever, blessings from life that we're intended to get, guess what? It won't affect those blessings. And when we look out in the world, we can look at the church, we can look at celebrities, your favorite celebrity, be an actor, musician, whatever. You get what I'm saying? And we can look out and we can see how once that limelight hits a person, because the Bible tells us that that which is done in the dark will eventually come to the light. And so that's so broad, because once the limelight, like I was saying, once it hits a person, you start to see all their demons, all the skeletons in their closet. You start to see all of these things come out. And those skeletons and those demons and those spirits that they're wrestling with are things that they were refusing to deal with. So now that I have this opportunity to expose who you really are, to show what's really going on within you, because we can only hold back who we really are for so long until life begins to unveil us. And so when we struggle to deal with things, we constantly find ourselves in a cycle of repeating the same cycles, the same patterns, the same, hiccups, mess ups, mistakes, whatever, until we again deal with it. So I really want to encourage us, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to deal with what you need to deal with. You get what I'm saying? No matter how great or grand it may be or feel to you, it's best that you face it, and that you get through it, and that you rely on God to get you through it, so that you can be able to move on to better, bigger and better places and things in your life. The next thing is, which kind of goes with this, is breaking generational curses. When we break generational curses, what it does is it helps us to build healthier legacies. It helps us to build these healthier legacies to where we can leave something positive, behind for the generations that are going to come after us, be it our children or our children's children, and whatever the case may be. But when you break generational curses, what you're doing is you're saying that thing which my family has struggled with for generations and for years and for cycles after cycles, that's no longer going to be a continuance. You get what I'm saying? That's no longer going to be a thing that I'm going to allow, to keep plaguing my family, keep plaguing us for generations to come. You get what I'm saying? And all it really takes is one person with a made up mind to say, you know what? It stops with me. It doesn't go beyond the point of me. It's not going to go on to my children. They're not going to pass it on to their children. You get what I'm saying? I'm going to deal with this thing right now. I'm going to face this thing right now. I'm going to face these issues, these triggers, these traumas, this abuse, this hurt, this pain. I'm going to address these demons, these spirits, these devils. I'm going to address these struggles right here, right now, and it stops with me. And so when we break generational curses, what it does is that it helps us, again, like I said, to build healthier relationships, healthier, experiences, healthier life situations. You get what I'm saying? To where that can begin to trickle down, because we were all born into, something that we didn't necessarily set in stone. You get what I'm saying? And we were born into our parents' struggles and addictions, be it drugs or sex, lies, whatever it may be. We were born into these things, right? And so it's up to us to make sure that I want to be the difference maker. I want to be the change. You get what I'm saying? In my family. So it's really up to us. And when we go back to our roots and we begin to evaluate our story, you get what I'm saying? We get to pick and choose what we'll take from our story, what we'll take from our roots, what we'll live with. You get what I'm saying? Because not everything is negative. You get what I'm saying? But not everything is also worth reliving. You get what I'm saying? So I just really encourage us with that, to know that it's possible. Get into a place to where you begin to set new precedences in your life and in your family lineage and for the generations to come. You get what I'm saying? Get into that place and allow yourself to really go there, because if not, then we're going to keep building upon brokenness. We're going to keep building upon damaged mindsets and spirits and hearts. We're going to keep building from the wrong places until, again, like I said, one person makes their mind up, or two people, or three, it don't matter, makes their mind up to say, that's it. It ends with me, which brings me to my next point and my final point with this category is that I can't be afraid to outgrow my soil. And the soil, it can be people, places, things, it can be voices. I can't be afraid to outgrow these things or leave these things behind so that I can grow. You know, a lot of times we stay stuck, we stay stagnant, we stay loyal, we stay committed for too long. And we don't set boundaries, we don't set healthy boundaries at that. But we become so afraid to outgrow because some of us we feel guilty in outgrowing things. Excuse me, we feel guilty in outgrowing people and places and who we were and how people used to know us and who people used to know us to be. We feel so guilty for outgrowing these things, but we can't allow that to be a scapegoat, and we can't allow that to be an excuse as to why we continue to repeat these same cycles and patterns and traditions and all of these things that we are constantly finding ourselves living. And we have to reach a point of, I'm no longer afraid. Enough is enough. You get what I'm saying? We have to get to a place of being tired, you know, and you'll truly know when you're at that place of being tired, because you will begin to outgrow, and it won't matter who you outgrow. It won't matter what you outgrow. You get what I'm saying? And so it's a big thing that we need to focus on, again, is not being afraid to outgrow that soil. And sometimes that soil can be family roots. You get what I'm saying? Some of us, we can only go so far. You get what I'm saying? Because of the limitations that were set in stone or set in place by our families. You get what I'm saying? Be it our parents, be it our siblings, aunts, uncles, grandparents. You get what I'm saying? And they tell us that you'll only amount, or you'll only be able to do this, or this is all life will ever offer you. And it's not necessarily the truth. And so when you outgrow your soil, you'll begin to truly see, you know, just how valuable, how great, how grand life is, and the life that God has for you once you get away from that fear and you say, you know what? I'm no longer going to keep growing right here. I'm no longer going to keep growing in the midst of this person, in the midst of that person, and this company, with this mindset, you know, with this tradition, with this thought pattern and process. I'm not going to continue to grow in those places. And so I'm just going to have to ask God, Lord, uproot me from this soil that I was born into, and replant me. You get what I'm saying? Into your soil, into your heavenly soil, so that I can begin to know life in a different way, to where I can begin to know myself in a different way. And ultimately I can get to know God in a different way, and get to know all that he has in store for me. My next big topic and point for this is healthier soil requires healthier seeds. It does you no good to take like seeds or good seeds or live seeds and put it into rotten soil. There's nothing you're gonna benefit from that, as we read about the conditions of bad soil and what that can do and what that looks like. It does us no good. So we have to understand, if I'm gonna ask God to replant me, I have to be healthier for where he replants me. I have to have a healthier mindset. I have to have a healthier character. I have to have a healthier lifestyle for where I want to be. And the first thing I want to focus on with this is that I'm careful of what I speak over my life, because I learned that my words have power. When I began to be replanted in healthier soil, I become more conscious of what I'm saying. I become more conscious of how I'm living my life. I set boundaries. Not everyone's allowed in my life. Not everyone can speak in my life. Not everyone has a voice. Not everyone has interest. Not everyone has not everyone has reach to be able to reach me. My value, I view myself differently. I value myself differently. I understand life differently. And so I began to speak, not how I was raised to speak, not how I was taught to speak, not how I was trained to speak, not what I was told was the right way. This is how you do it. That's how you do it. And I found out that it wasn't. No, but I reconditioned everything about me. When I began to want to live a healthier life, that means everything must change. My mind must change. My spirit must shift. My heart the way I am, the way I maneuver, the way I handle things, the way I go about things, everything about it has to change. This is the only way I'm going to see a healthier outcome. This is the only way I'm going to be able to live a healthier life. Next thing is not everyone can sit at my table, and I kind of touched on this, but you become more conscious and aware of who you're giving an invitation to your life, who you're inviting in, who you're allowing to sup with you, to sit with you, who you're allowing to climb, the success ladder with you. You become aware of all of these things because these things matter to you more, because I didn't always know life in a healthy way. And so I just allowed any and everything to go. There was no boundaries. There was no me standing up for myself. There was no me seeing the best for myself. There was no me knowing that I deserve better. So now that I know that, because I'm getting rid of what I've always known, I'm breaking generational patterns and cycles and mindsets. I'm breaking all of that, and I'm going to create something better, something that I can be proud of, something I can leave behind for my kids, something I can create for my family so that new generations, they could continue it. And so how I do that is I become very conscious, and I become full of boundaries, and I don't become limited, but I'm limited who I allow, again, access to me, into my life, and to sit with me and to sup with me. Another thing is that I become overly protective of my energy. And this is a big one. We have to be conscious and aware of who and what brings down our energy, who and what brings down our momentum. I notice every time I get around you, I feel negative, or I feel that we have to realize that we have to pay close attention to this, because life is ultimately speaking to us and is letting us know, hey, this ain't good for you. They ain't good for you. That ain't good for you. So I become overly protective of my energy and who I give it to. I handle my value differently. I'm a firm believer that not everyone deserves you. Not everyone deserves to be with you. Not everyone deserves to love you. Not everyone deserves to experience you. I'm a big believer on that. Because some people, they won't know how to handle you. Some people will only break you more than what you're already broken. Some people will take you to hell and back. And it's a real thing. So you must be protective of your energy. Value it differently. Love you enough to say that, no, like I said earlier, enough is enough. Healthier lifestyles require healthier choices. The last thing with this is that I am responsible for the health of my soil, and it's important that I take care of me. This is something that we all need to understand. The Bible says, and I love it, it says that David encouraged himself in the Lord, meaning that he didn't wait for somebody else to come and do it. He didn't wait for his mother. He didn't wait for his father. He didn't wait for his sister, his brother. He didn't wait for an outside source to come and to speak to him. He began to speak into his own life. And this is what we need to learn how to do. We need to learn how to speak life into ourselves. This is how we take care of our soil. This is how we keep our soil healthy so that only good things can grow and sprout from it, how God intends for it to. And so I understand that I'm responsible for the health of my soil. So in understanding that that's my responsibility, it ties it all into, I'm careful of who I allow to garden in my soil, who I allow to plant in my soil, who I allow to water my soil. I'm conscious of all of these things. Because see, they could come and garden, plant, water, and do all of that and just go on about their life and then just leave me damaged, out of place, broken, and everything. But if I don't take responsibility for my life, it's not saying anything about them. It's saying everything about me. Because one thing I know is that people will only do to you and treat you how you allow them to. So understand that your soil is your responsibility. Your soil is legit your responsibility. And so I encourage us with this before I close out is that, again, get to understand the soil that you find yourself rooted in. Understand the soil that you find yourself rooted in. And again, like I said, that soil can represent so much. Family, friends, loved ones, relationships, It can represent your job, whatever you want it to represent. All it is a place where you find yourself growing. How am I growing? Is this healthy ground for me to grow in? If you're in a church and you don't feel growth, you don't see growth, you got questions, you see things. If you're in a relationship and you don't feel encouraged or motivated, or you don't feel things that you should feel, being in a healthy relationship, I say there's nothing wrong with questioning that. There's nothing wrong with evaluating these situations. If it's on a job, if I can't grow in this place, why do I need to stay here? If it's not adding value to my life, why do I need to stay committed and loyal to this? If it's only bringing me down and dragging me down, if it's only taken from me, at what point do I realize this and stand up for myself and begin to lay down some new soil, a new foundation, so that I can build differently, healthier, wiser? The responsibility falls into your lap, into your hands. And I want to close out with Matthew 13, verses 3-9 in the Amplified version. And this was Jesus, talking to his disciples, and he tends to talk in parables. So it says in verse 3 that he told them many things in parables, saying, "Listen carefully. A sower went out to sow seed in his field. And as he sowed, some seed fell beside the road between the fields, and the birds came and ate it. Other seed fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil. At once they sprang up because they had no depth of soil." So in this case, instantly the seed was planted, the flower, it instantly came to life. But because there was no depth, because there was nothing to add to it, there was nothing to continue the lifespan of this flower, this is what happens. But when the sun rose, the sun represents the fire. And this is how a lot of us are. We get in a place, we see some change, we see some growth, we see some progression, but then life starts to happen. God allows the fire to be turned up just a little bit. And he starts to test us. We start to experience things, go through things. And those seeds that was planted in our lives, even though it gave us hope, it gave us faith, it encouraged us to start the business, it encouraged us to start the podcast, it encouraged us to start the ministry. When life started happening, when the sun rose, when the fire got turned up a little bit, look what it says, they were scorched. And because they had no root, they withered away. Because there was really no depth to how I felt. There was really no depth to the excitement. I didn't have a true firm foundation. So I wasn't able to keep going. I didn't have all the knowledge I needed. I didn't have all the wisdom. I didn't have all the tools. I didn't have everything I needed to keep going. And so when life tested me, I ultimately crumbled. I gave way. I gave up. I closed the doors to my business. I turned off the mic. I stopped doing the podcast. I stopped preaching. I stopped teaching. I stopped encouraging. The zeal, it left me because there was no true depth to it. I didn't really understand why I was doing it. And this is always why it's important. This is why it's always important to understand the why. In verse 7, it says, other seed fell among thorns, and thorns came up and choked them out. And these thorns, they can represent bills, relationships, finances, stress, depression, sadness. These thorns, they can represent so many things. And so what happens when you plant the seeds, but then the thorns start to grow out of it, it choked them out. It became too much. The pressure became too much. And so the seeds weren't able to fully come to life or to bloom the way that they were intended to. In verse 8, it says, other seed fell on good soil and yielded grain, some 100 times as much as as was sown, some 60 times, and some 30. This is the point where God wants us to be at with our soil and understanding the soil that we're rooted in. When we get rooted in good soil, this is the benefit of being rooted in good soil, is we begin to see grain. We begin to see gain. We begin to see things happen. We begin to sprout differently. We bloom differently. We glow differently. We live differently. We experience life differently. We value ourselves differently. This is the effects of good soil. In verse 9, it says, he who has ears to hear, let him hear and heed my words. God is always planting seeds of wisdom, of knowledge, of understanding, of growth, of betterment. He's always giving us everything that we need. It's up to us to hear God. It's up to us to hear God. And the only way that we can hear God is when we get out of self, when we break the traditions of man, when we break the family traditions, the generational curses, the patterns, when we get so much out of this spoiled and rotten soil that we have been growing in for too long. This is when we begin to hear God and experience God. I tell you, the healthier I get in my mind, the healthier I get in my life, I experience God differently. I experience life differently. I experience things differently. And it's all glory to God because I'm tending to my soil every day, plucking up the weeds, the dead roots, doing the work that needs to be done. Not perfect, but doing the work that needs to be done. Striving each day to be perfect. I don't lean on the excuse that I'm human. That's not going to be my limitation. I'm not going to be limited by that. Because I understand that I'm human, but I also understand who my God is, and I understand the power that he possesses to give me the strength to grow, to change, to heal, to become. And so every day I fight to get it right. I'm doing the work. If I mess up, I got to get the understanding, got to get the wisdom, got to get back on the potter's wheel and ask God to make me, shape me, break me, mold me, uproot me from here and replant me right over here where I need to be. Take me out of this dead soil and root me in this soil that's full of life, that's full of the word of God, that's full of the things of God, that's full of the kingdom of God. The soil that we find ourselves rooted in plays a huge part in how our lives turn out. As I stated earlier when I talked about that bad soil, the most important thing that is said is that all of which affect the overall growth of the plant. Some of us, we come from bad families, and this ain't to judge our families or to look down upon our family members. And we think that because of that, we don't have a chance at life. But I'm here to let you know you got a chance to live. You got a chance to experience life so differently and experience God differently. It's up to you making a choice. And today I pray that you make that choice, that enough is enough. I'm breaking these generational curses. Not another one of us going to be locked up. Not another one of us going to go to the grave at an early age. Not another one of us going to be broke. Not another one of us going to live life in fear. It starts with you making these choices and decisions to do better. To not only have, again, healthier soil, but to have healthier seeds. How you talk to yourself, how you talk about where you came from, what you went through, how you value it. Because there's value even in the things that we go through. Even though we may not understand it right off, there's value in everything that we go through. So I want to really encourage us with this. And I truly do believe that God has more for you. And I can tell you that because I can see the more that he's doing in me. So I pray that we walk away from this with something that will encourage you to start the work, to start the journey, to start the replanting, the regardening in your soul, in your mind, in your family, in your life, in your home, in your marriage, in your relationships, your friendships. Be it with yourself, with your children, that you let God water your garden. Because when God waters your garden, what's going to bloom from it is going to have you amazed. So I thank y'all for joining me on today with this episode. And I encourage y'all to like, comment, subscribe, share this with somebody that you feel may need this video. And as always, God bless. And until next time.
Wisdom is for free, but yet it's overpriced. And I never seen success happen overnight.